Good, good afternoon, Vanada. Good afternoon. Okay, మనము యూజీ సెకండ్ ఇయర్ సెమిస్టర్ 4 జువాలజీలో
మధురం మధురం
సిల్క్ ఎన్హాన్స్మెంట్ అండ్ ఎలెక్టివ్ కోర్స్ 2 అయినటువంటి వర్మీ కల్చర్ గురించి డిస్కస్ చేసుకుంటున్నాము. సో ఈ వర్మీ కల్చర్ టాపిక్ లో మనము లాస్ట్ సెక్షన్ ఆఫ్ ద సైట్స్ అండ్ ఎర్త్వార్మ్స్ అండ్ కంపోస్టింగ్ సిస్టమ్ అండ్ టెక్నిక్స్ బీడింగ్ అండ్ ఎసెన్షియల్ పారామీటర్స్ ఆఫ్ ద వర్మీ కల్చర్ అనేటువంటి టాపిక్స్ ఉంటాయి. సో దీంట్లో మనము లాస్ట్ క్లాస్ లో వర్మీ కంపోస్టింగ్ లో సెలెక్షన్ ఆఫ్ ద సైట్ అండ్ ఎర్త్వార్మ్స్ అనేటువంటి టాపిక్ మీద డిస్కస్ చేసుకున్నాము. సో దీంట్లో మనము వాట్ ఈస్ ద వర్మీ కంపోస్ట్ అండ్ వర్మీ కల్చర్ అండ్ అండర్స్టాండింగ్ ద సైట్ ఆఫ్ ద వర్మీ కంపోస్ట్ is very important, and we discussed about the different types of the worms for the vermi composting and which worms are suitable for the vermi composting, and understands the bio waste is converted into organic material which is good nutrients for the plant growth, and applies this knowledge for the adopting as well as making the compost. So these are the topics we discussed in previous class.
మధురం మధురం వదనం మధురం
Okay, today we discussed the unit 2 composting system and techniques. Okay, we know that after studying this unit, you will be able to know what are the composting systems and composing process, and understand the different types of the composting systems, and know the differences in the different types of the vermi composting system, and understand which system is good for vermi composting, and also understands that bin method composting is comfortable for the houses, and apply this knowledge for the establishing a vermi composting unit, and understand about the indoor composting methods and its importance. Next, we can know the details, the process and its benefits to farmer of your villages. Okay, now we go to introduction. The present days accumulates huge amount of the organic waste from agriculture as well as households uses, which has becomes one of the major environmental issue. This waste material can be degraded into good organic substance on its own in a natural process, but require much time, utilization of the organic waste and manure. This agriculture soils because the production uh, the production was small enough to be used in limited quantities, which adequate applications rates, and organic waste are a valuable resource as a soil fertilizer, providing a high content of the micro and micronutrients from crop growth, and they represent a low cost alternative to inorganic fertilizers. Environmental problems arise when the local products and accumulation of the manure through the intensive and strategies is too great, resulting into difficulties in the finding sufficient land areas for the disposing of the enormous amount of organic waste produced. Indiscriminate spreading of large quantities of such organic waste can damage soil fertility, can cause the water pollution and odors, and may present a healthy risk. The potentially adverse effects of such a indiscriminate applications and include over fertilization, particularly with the NP and K ammonia toxicity for the soil biota and accumulations and the concentration of the heavy metals in the soil surface and the soil biota, gradual increase in the soil alkalinity, salts accumulations in the dry conditions, establishment of the anaerobiosis and anaxic decomposition pathway, input and dispersal of human pathogens, and groundwater pollution. These important environment problems can be avoided if organic wastes are treated appropriately before their disposal or use. In this way, aerobic biodegradation can be involved to the produce either a high quality final products or simply to reduce the environmental problems through a rapid process of the waste without the increased cost. Through the end of the aerobic degradation process, the oxygen and demand is low. The organic materials are converted to more suitable products. Carbon dioxide and water are the released and heat is evolved. So this natural process of the broken down can be accelerated by the happing the material into windrows to avoid the heat loss and thus allowing the temperature increase, or by using the a specific species of the earthworms as a agents for the turning, fragmentation and aeration. Next, we go to the composting and the vermicomposting processes. So now we discuss about the composting and vermicomposting process. These are the best method of the biological and stabilization of the soil organic waste. And composting involves the accelerated and degradation of the organic matter by the microorganisms under control the conditions and during which the organic material and undergoes the characteristics of thermophilic stages. It's 45 degrees centigrade to 65 degrees centigrade. That's allow the a sanitization of the waste by the elimination of the pathogenic microorganisms. Two phases can be distinguished in the composting. In the thermophilic stages where decomposing takes place more intensively and which therefore constitutes the active phase of the composting. And next B1 is a maturing stage, which is marked by the decrease in the temperature of the mesophilic range and where the remaining organic components are degraded at the slower rate. The vermicomposting involves the bio-oxidation and stabilization of the organic material by the joint action of the earthworms and microorganisms. Although it is the microorganisms that biochemically degrade the organic matter, earthworms are the a crucial drivers of the process. As they aerate the conditions, and the fragment the substrate, thereby the drastically increasing the microbial activity. At once acts a mechanical benders and the communicating the organic matter, they modifying its a physical and chemical status by gradually reducing the CN ratio and increasing the surface area exposed to the microorganisms, thus making it much more favorable for the microbial activity and further the decomposition. In the composting, the duration of the activity phase into fixed the will be dependent on the species and population density of the earthworms and their ability to ingest the waste. That means ingestion of the rate. So next, open composting system. So what is the open composting system? So open composting system is a enables sanitization of the waste and elimination of the toxic components. So and the subsequent vermicomposting reduce the a particle size and increasing the nutrient availability, and both compostings and vermicomposting the are aerobic biodegradation process of the organic waste and that involve the complex in, interactions between the organic waste, microorganism, moisture and oxygen contents. In the addition to oxygen and water, microorganisms require a source of the carbon micronutrients such as the NPK, that means nitrogen and phosphorus and potassium. These are the micronutrients. So micronutrients and certain amount of the trace elements for their normal growth and reproduction. These requirements are provided by the organic waste materials. By using the organic matter as a food sources the microorganisms and reproduce rapidly and release carbon dioxide, water, some organic products and energy. So now window composting. So window composting is a constance of the placing the mixture of the raw material in long narrow piles known as the windows. These are generally 3 to 6 meters on wide and 3 to 4 meters height, and they are agitated or turned on a regular basis using a front end loader or window turners. The size of the window depends on the bulk density of the material to be composted and on the equipments to be used for the turning windows. And the aerate primarily by natural or passive air movement, especially convection and gases diffusion. However, the aeration is affected significantly by the particle size and the porosity of the material comprising the window. Therefore, in order to effectively aerate a typical sized window, it is important to determine the porosity of the materials. Windows made from the materials and that have lower bulk densities, such as green waste, can be lodged that a wet dense windows that comprised of the manure next or other mixture feed stocks, and both the initial mixing and the frequent turning of the window can be supplement the oxygen for the microbes, re-establish the desired and porosity and releasing the trapped heat, water vapor, and other gases. Additionally, turning and mixing reduce of the potential for the pockets of the anaerobic decomposition in areas that are too moist or too rich in nitrogenous substrate. Furthermore, turning and mixing expose all material equally to the air, release hot gases, and disperse the moisture that accumulates in the core of the window. Thus in this way of all material is composed evenly. In addition, raw materials are blended well, and particular sizes are reduced with the increase the surface area. Next, we go to the forced aerated static fills. The forced aerated static fills. So, the simplest form so sorry. Post aerated static piles. This is the substrate can be mixed with the bulking agents such as the window chips, and which provides the structural and stability to the material, and maintenance air voids without the requirement of the periodic uh, agitation. Therefore, no agitation or mixing turning is required during the compost cycle. And once the pill, pill is on the batch basic, this static pill may be improved by using water pipe system, and situated on the top of the pill and over with the flexible non porous cover is a placed non porous covers is a placed on the top of the root. These modifications help to reduce the natural conversion of the air through the waste material, which helps to maintain the elevated temperature and maintenance adequate moisture content in the ton. This is the facilities and greater process control and increase this rate of the decomposing and the aerated static piles. Static piles involved the introduction of the network or performed pipes and placed at the bottom of the waste material or laid in the flooring beneath the pile. And forced aeration is the introducing at the controlled rate to aid aerobic decomposition and maintaining the temperature. It is the intended to supply air to the composting mass using the pressurized air system, typically using the low head greater than 150 millimeters high volume of fan units, and rather than the turning the mass. There are basically three ways to oxygenate the piles. So the first one, bottom section. Their air is drawn through the pile by the imposition of the negative pressure in this kind of the ventilation height is a critical factor with the piles and higher than the 8 to 9 feet it is almost impossible to obtain the uniform. Next, aeration. These pills must be blocked with an insulating layers to ensure a uniform and distribution of the temperature. Bottom blowing. The aeration is provided by the blowing air through the pill and positive pressure. This method tends to cool down and dry the bottom layer of the pill and leaving the outer layer warm and moist. Next, alternative ventilation. In this system, bottom blowing aeration is a alternative with the bottom section aeration. The alternative flow of the air movement lead a homogenization of the temperature and moisture. Next, gradient throughout the pill. Next, in composting. So next we go discussed the visual composting. In visual composting, is one such a technology that has the potential to meet these targets. The ton in the visual composting has been adapted to cover wide range of the composting system from the enclosed halls to tunnels and containers. The common feature is the material being composed is a contained so has to allow the higher degree of the process control such as forced aeration rather than just aeration by the mechanical turning in visual system control and accelerate decomposition by the creating ideal conditions for the microbes by bringing the compost mixture up to the optimum temperature as the quickly as possible in visual system can be categorized a broadly few different types of according to their designs and structure, especially containers, soils, and aerated voids and tunnels, enclosed halls, and rotatory composting system. Container system range from the transportable metal containers to static concentrate boxes. The capacities range from 30 to 80 cubic meters for the transportable containers and up to 180 cubic meters for the static containers. The modular nature of this system allow the wind range of the compost volume up to processed. The transportation enable containers to be stored at the separate sites, and some container system can be stocked to reduce the space required. Some containers process in the batches and some in the continuous flows, and continuous flow system use mechanical agitation of the waste and are usually loaded by the conveyors belt, and while batch system are usually loaded and unloaded with a front end loaders, and soils or a vertical composting units, so we called VCU in shortcut methods, can be divided into the dynamic and plug flow types. And dynamic soils operates in the batches and agents that waste with the pedal or a aqueous. High mixing rates allow the system to manage the wet waste provided, and the amended the material such as the wood chips is added in plug flow system. Waste is stocked into a tower and descended under its own weight as the composting material is removed at the base. This type of used for the dire waste because there may be a dangerous of the compaction with wet bases. Some soils may be included second curing reactors and mature the compost rather than using the window system. Next, continuous vertical reactors. Usually the materials are loaded from the top of the reactors and discharged from the bottom. Oxygenation is provided by the forcing air up from the bottom through the composting mass. These reactors can be processed and large amount of the material and may be as high as 28 feet. However, the height is extremely critical and masses high than 10 feet loaded the serious problem in the ventilation by hypo or hyperventilation. Next to horizontal reactors. The horizontal reactors, the materials are arranged along the length of the unit and the height never ex ex exceeds the 6 to 9 feet. Then the principal advantage of this system is a feasibility for the controlling the process. It's being possible to shorter than the thermophilic stage because the oxygen is supplied either by the turning or by aeration. The mass to the compost can be oxygenated, uniform, and temperature easily controlled. Next, open vermicomposting system. So the open composting system is designed to provide vermicompost pills, and composting involves the action and thermophilic, so it heat loving microorganisms that thrive under the increasing temperature and conditions, and if it is correctly managed, this can be allowed for destruction of the discharging diseases and causing the organisms. Open aerobic composting occur under the moist and oxygen rich and conditions where complex organic molecules and broken down the microorganisms, and this release nutrients and energy contained in the waste. The organic waste is stored in long rows or pills. The periodically turn into the aginated to promote the aeration and the homogenization pills, and needed be a watered and periodically to control of the moisture contents. So window or pill size is just determined primarily from the climate weights and composition and the type of the aeration used. This technology type works ideally in the situation where there is a high proportion of organic material in the waste stream and markets are accessible and available. Generally, this composting process is a best suitable for the garden and add waste has there as limited order issue the associated with this material. While open composting is a certainly of a processing sewage and sludge and food scrap, the inability to maintain the fine control over process conditions and make the health department approval more difficult to obtain. So open window composting. So this is the print treatment volume reduction. So it rejects the removal and shredders and chippers. Next, biological treatment. This is the composting method and outputs. We get the compost by the output. And next, low cost floor beds. So the traditional method of the vermicomposting have been based on beds or windrows and the ground containing materials up to 1.5 feet deep, but such methods have a numerous drawbacks. They require the large area of the land for the large scale production and are relatively labor intensive even when the machinery is used for the adding material to beds and watering and the harvesting the products. Outdoor windows are the beds with the simple walls or the simplest type of the process. The size of the beds is but the width should not exceed 8 feet, which is allow the entire bed to be inspected easily without the needed to walk the bed, and it is also compatible with the size of the many suitable covering and constructions material. The length is the less important and depend on the area available. The beds can be light on the soil that the freely and draining and does not suffer the water logging, and the concrete areas are ideal for the earthworms and processing system in since they provide as a firm surface for the tractor operations. However, it is essential for the precautions to be taken to prevent too much water for the entering the beds and allow the access water to drain away from the bed, and usually such floor beds are covered with the removable materials and the cover the removed only for the watering and the addition of the new waste material. It is necessary to the feed prepared organic waste on the top of the bed surface in thin layers of 2 to 4 every week or so depending on the type of the waste. So this is the low cost floor beds. So in this bed method of the composting, next gantry fed beds. So it is the important principle to improve the efficiency of the processing of the organic waste by the earthworms. In this waste are added to the beds in three layers 2.5 to 5.0 centimeters or at the frequent and intervals. This can be done radially by the adding the waste by means of the overhead and gantry running on the wheels on the top of the walls of the beds, and gradual addition of the waste and minimize this a generation of the heat during the composting, and ensures that the earthworms are continuously processing the fresh waste close the surface. So next, raised and gantry feed beds. This method makes the earthworms usually to confine to the top 10 to 15 centimeters of the bed. The efficiency and rate processing the waste can be considerably increasing by the placing the bed above the ground. If the bed has the mesh under underneath and waste matter process and organic matter can be sieved by the mechanical actions such as a broker's bars and can be collected using a moving belt or a suri scrapers. If the waste is added to the top of the bed in thin layers from a mobile gantry daily and can be conveniently collected the base and continuous waste processing system can be applied. Such system can be relatively and sophisticated by the complete mechanization and the automation of the addition and the collection system of the waste. Next, Dorset bed and the style beds. The design of the type of the bed is quite different from the relatively shallow flat beds and described the previously. Waste is added to the angled leading edge in the shallow layers. Because of the large amount of the waste added, the benefit of this type of bed. This the wedge tends be more self-heating. If a particularly suitable for the cattle waste and the separated pig solids. It is especially recommended for the processing organic waste in the winter, and the depth the wedge should next exceed 1 meter. This floor of the Dorset wedge has the same requirement of the outdoor beds. It is designed from the free draining and firm enough to the withstand quite heavy machinery. The only essential work required is the removable and rear wall, which should be sound enough to be able to the front of the loaders to dig the bed, and side walls can help maintaining the appropriate depth of the waste. Once the majority of the leading edge of the bed appears to be at once, a new layer fresh waste is added. Usually done by the top of the leading edge and then dragging the waste down on into the whole surface. Care should be taken avoid the unnecessary compaction of the bed. With the long beds, a side discharge musk and spreader can be used this method of the composting. The amount of the waste added to the bed should be lower during the summer than in the winter month of the prevent overheating. Because of the shape of the Dorset wedge, is it not important to specify the dimensions or time or harvest the bed. And the best indicator is when there is at least a load of the approximately 20 meter cubes. That's nearly 26.2. So that can be harvested. Most earthworms are probably in the top 15 centimeters of the leading edge, and therefore the materials has been removed in order to harvest the earthworms work materials, and behind which is collected the loaded up the transport. The remaining inclumes is used to form a new wedge as before. Next, we in containers vermicomposting. So the in container vermicomposting is a we use the like bins and batch reactors. So this is so the in-kind one me composting first one is the bins. The other system refer to be using of the bins or large containers of a stocked in racks. Although these and other small scale system are the widely used, they have a drawbacks when applied on the larger scale. They require a considerable machinery for the handling and the lifting, and also there are several problems related to addition of the water and addition layers of the new materials and a drainage. And what's a discussed batch vermicomposting in the stocked boxes or containers, and suggested is that it is so labor and intensive, since the batches have to be moved into order to add more waste or water. So the bin composting it is have a some layers. It is first lid and next working trays and processing tray 2 and collection trays and holding trays and base. This mission is containing these are all. So some the bending bedding. So what is the first in the top of the bottom layer having the bedding, and next under the under so the top of bedding we add the worms, and next area is food area 1 and food area 2. It is at the cardboard or paper covered with this food area, and after we add the food area 5 and food area 6, and next we cover the cardboards or papers, and next food area 9 and food area 10, and next cover the cardboards or papers. This is way preparing the bins to making the compost in containers. So next batch reactors. Much more promoting the techniques have used to containers and provide with the lights. This allow adding the feedstocks at the top of the modified and spreaders or mobile and gantries and collecting the vermicompost, and mechanically at the bottom after being a sieved through the mesh floors using the brokers bars. Such methods were developed and rested at the National Institution of Agriculture Engineering. So, and also England, and RAA correctly began used to several places in the United States and elsewhere, ranging from the relatively low technology system using a manual loading and the collection of the completely automated system using the a hydraulically driven continuous flow reactors. Such reactor process and deep layers of the suitable organic waste in 30 to 60 days. Although this system required more capital outlay, the cost of the reactors can be returned in the 1 to 3 years. So next, and they can be operated the large scale with the minimum labor requirement, and the automated reactor process is 1000 tons of the waste per hour can be billed for the 35,000 to 50,000, and the lower technology system cost much less. Detailed economic studies at the also have shown that such reactors have a much greater economic the potential to be produced to high quantity plants and growth media and shorter time, and the more efficiently that the windows are ground beds and even layers and scale system called to the S was a developed by material batches in southern France and was a based on similar principles involving and separation and sorting of the waste followed by the composting vermiculture. Next one, sieving this system can be converted 27% of the total urban waste stream into the valuable vermicomposting. Next, we go to into the indoor vermicomposting bin, and composting is an excellent option for the reducing house environment and important to preparing the natural beneficial soils addictive. And however, one maybe is not have to access to outdoor space of the traditional compost and have the vermicompost is a great alternative that allow for an indoor composting operations with the minimum space conditions, and it need to create a warm bin to throw the leftover the food scraps for the worms to feed of the create a rich soil. Next one, pick up a spot into the house to place the worm bin. The best spot for the worm bins keep a constant temperature and moisture levels, and avoid the placing it near the hectares open air conditions. Even although worms bin usually don't produce the much smell, and the ideal temperature for the warm bins is a 50 to 75 degrees centigrade, sorry, Fahrenheit, or 12.8 to 23.9 degrees centigrade. Stone the worms bin is a closed air laundry rooms or other storerooms. If large kitchen space is available and not worried about the potential smells, it is kept to the kitchen for easily throw the food in it. Next, purchase the worm bins or adapt the storage containers. So we purchase the worms to composting the waste products. So how do we purchase? So worm bins are a pre-made vermicomposting containers. Many grading or organic supply stores sell them. Purpose can be served with a 20-gallon storage containers from the store. These containers hold the bedding, food scraps, and worms. It also regulates the amount of the moisture in the bedding and blocks light. These containers should have lid and otherwise improvise and cover with the black plastic like the trash bags, and drill holes in the bins for airflow. So a pre-mode worms bin is available with the holes around can be used and composting purpose. And a storage can to cut the half inch that is approximately 1.27 centimeters. So hole is the bottom siders and lid of the bins about the 20 holes in the bin, and few holes is the lid and bottom, and at least 3 holes on the each side of the bin. or established. The worms want to live through these holes because of their aversion to light. However, holes are covered with the white screen or mesh. Set the bin on the blanks with the plastic under it. So here we use the cinders blacks to the chunks of the 4 into 4 centimeters. It made of the wood or something else to keep the bins off the ground. And all large plastic seats is the part of the house is allotted and warm bins is kept. Then bins are kept on the blacks seatedly. Next, worms are brought from the garden store. The best worms to use the vermicomposting operations and red winglers. So red winglers are the best compositors worms because we use the this red winglers. We get the best vermicompost. So these are the best to turn the composting. So African earthworms and composting worms are also good option. So we use the two types of worms here. What are the earthworms? African earthworms, and next one is the red winglers. These both are very good for the composting. Next, this is the using methods we discussed about. So the indoor vermicomposting bin and batches reactors, the in container vermicomposting, and next one is the open vermicomposting system. These systems, and next invisible composting system. These are the types of the vermicomposting systems, the open composting systems. The composting and vermicomposting process are involved the how many types we discussed now. Open composting system is the one. This having windrow composting and forced aerating starting pills. And next one is invisible composting. So we discuss the invisible composting. What are their continuous vertical reactors and horizontal reactors? And next one is the open vermicomposting system. It can having a low cost floor beds. So we see it is the oldest method, oldest process and oldest method is involved in the low cost floor beds. And next, gantry feed beds. Next, raised gantry feed beds and Dorset bed styled beds. So next, in container vermicomposting. It's having bins and batch reactors. Next one is the indoor composting bins. So it can having purchase warm bin or adapted storage containers and drill holes in the bin for the air flowing. These are process are involving in the indoor vermicomposting bins and set the bin on blacks with the plastic under it. Worms are brought from the garden store. So this is the total matter. Is about the composting system and techniques. So we follow these techniques and to prepare the vermicomposting. So this is the today topic. I hope you understand. Thank you.